What's up everyone? Alex here. I admitted in my review of Atelier Ryza that the game was the first I'd ever played through and finished in the series. Shortly after my review debuted, many longtime fans recommended that I played the Atelier Dusk trilogy of games next. As if Koei Tecmo was pouring through my video's comments, they announced soon after that the Atelier Dusk DX trilogy was being released in January 2020. I've gotten a review key from Koei Tecmo for all three games since then, and this video will mainly focus on my experience with the first game of the series, Atelier Aisha. But this trip down memory lane poses a very important question. Will the leap in gameplay from modern Atelier games to Atelier Aisha be too jarring to enjoy it? Atelier Aisha, The Alchemist of Dusk DX, is a traditional turn-based RPG with a non-linear story progression featuring multiple selectable endings and a heavy emphasis on crafting. You play the role of Aisha Altugal, a descendant from a long line of apothecaries. On the anniversary of your sister Neo's disappearance, a strange apparition of your sister appears in front of you, seemingly reacting to your surprise and attempting to initiate contact. No sooner do you see her, that she quickly vanishes from existence, with its resulting shock and silence interrupted by the presence of a man named Keithgriff, who bore witness to what happened. After forcing himself into the situation, he rudely advises you to learn the ways of alchemy to find out what happened to your sister, and perhaps have a chance to bring her back home. It's with this edict that Aisha decides to pack her things to set forth on a journey that'll change her life forever. The Atelier games have been known to have a myriad of different gameplay systems to keep things fresh, so naturally, Atelier Aisha comes with its own unique set of features. There's one that has Aisha writing her experiences in her diary, which unlocks various traits, perks, and synthesis recipes. There's a contest that happens every so often that'll allow you to procure hard-to-get items and win awesome prizes. There's even a bazaar that happens every month where your party members can sell items that they've found through your adventures. And that's not even talking about the game's core gameplay systems in combat and synthesis. The combat system in Atelier Aisha is easy enough to understand, but a bit tricky to explain. Enemies occupy the space in the middle of the battlefield, while party members either surround these enemies or are lined up in front of them in the event of preemptive attacks. You initiate these preemptive attacks as you would in most modern JRPGs. You hit an enemy on the field with your weapon and you get a preemptive attack. The enemy's distance from your party members, as well as the direction they're facing, is really important in Atelier Aisha. If a party member attacks an enemy that's not facing them, they'll be able to land a critical hit. If a party member decides to use the regular attack to hit an enemy that's near them, there's a good chance that they could inflict either a status effect or push the enemy towards the back line, all of which are indicated before you commit to the action. In order to facilitate moving between in front of and behind enemies, each party member can build up a meter called Active Command, which allows them to do an action shortly after the current controlled party member's turn. These active commands can let your party members attack enemies from the back, ultimately placing them behind enemy lines, following up a party member's attack, or even preemptively shielding another party member from harm. Much like older Atelier games, the only character that can use items is Aisha herself, and everyone else is relegated to using attacks and skills. The notion that Aisha is the only person who can use items heightens the importance of crafting powerful bombs and healing items for her to use in battle, and is an aspect of this game's combat that I absolutely love. Eventually, you'll also unlock the ability to use powerful super attacks for each of your party members, adding yet another way to inflict massive amounts of damage to your enemies. All of these elements combined make for a turn-based battle system that is fast-paced, engaging, and, above all else, fun. And if it's somehow not fast enough to your liking, you can always speed up the combat animations, a feature that's new to this version of the game. Synthesis in Atelier Aisha is mostly a straightforward affair. Initially, you're just selecting materials for each of the categories that a recipe requires. As you advance further into your alchemy level, you'll be able to manipulate your materials more efficiently, creating better quality items as a result, even imbuing them with better effects and properties. Though there are lots of tools you can use to modify the product of your synthesis, I find that I miss the depth that the synthesis in Atelier Ryza afforded me. That said, I do feel that it's much easier to experiment with Atelier Aisha's synthesis system in many other ways, which was really fun to explore. Unlike other Atelier games, you don't need to have different kinds of gathering equipment to gather in the field, but there is an item that can help you not spend too much time gathering, which is quite crucial, especially early on. Playing through Atelier Aisha and its many systems gives off a feeling that it's a living world, one that's ever-changing. This is mostly due to the fact that all of these wonderful features are governed by Atelier Aisha's handling of time in the game, which almost always ensures that something new is going on elsewhere in the world. In fact, the heightened importance of time in Atelier Aisha is probably the most jarring change I've experienced coming from a newer Atelier game like Ryza. Almost everything you do in the game, from making multiple items with synthesis to gathering materials, all pass time. And with this time come deadlines, which not only exist for the various side quests in the game, but also dictates when the game ends. Yep, you heard that right. The game doesn't go on forever, and the game slyly tells you near the beginning that you only have, at most, 3 years to finish the game.
However, that girl, in her current state, I'd say she has about 3 years.
In my hubris, I thought to myself that the game would give me enough time to roam about and take my time gathering as many materials as I wanted and occasionally doing a quest here and there. But such is not the case in Atelier Aisha, and I learned that lesson the hard way when I reached April of the 4th year, 30 hours later, when my game just basically ended. I'm not going to spoil the ending that I got, but all I'll say is that it felt as though a carpet was pulled underneath me, which echoed the surprise I felt when the game ended. Fortunately, the game does have a New Game Plus, which carries over money, each character's equipped items such as weapons, armor, accessories, Aisha's adventuring equipment, along with Aisha's synthesis skills. But if there's anything Atelier Aisha has taught me, is that I should never underestimate the importance of time in these earlier games. All this time juggling is complicated by the fact that Atelier Aisha's main story is split in multiple ways, unlocking different selectable endings upon the completion of each. Having multiple goals offer up a non-linear storytelling experience that some people might find a bit jarring. In addition to these goals, there are other hidden ending requirements that are either time-locked or completely missable that aren't visually tracked by the game in its menus, forcing you to have to replay through portions of the game just to ensure that you don't miss a thing. So, if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything while playing through Atelier Aisha, make it a habit of saving on multiple save slots at various points. A lot of these would have probably been alleviated had the game's user interface conveyed a lot of this information properly. It's quite jarring to go back to this game knowing that even the way it displays its quest doesn't conform with the standards of the time. For example, instead of collapsing different tasks underneath each goal, you'll have to select and click on a goal in the Goals tab to see its various tasks. Then click on one of its tasks, which then takes you to a completely different tab. And that's just for goals. There's a totally different tab for side quests called Deliveries. However, other non-essential side objectives, like map completion for example, are also categorized under goals. Add to that a myriad of strange UI design choices, such as displaying black text against a dark brown background, making the text difficult to read, and the idea of navigating through Atelier Aisha's menus suddenly becomes a slightly less than straightforward experience. It's great that later Atelier games have improved their quality of life and UI design dramatically, but I caution anyone who's delving into the series' back catalog to expect this kind of confusion in Atelier Aisha. I don't want to belabor my point about deadlines in Atelier Aisha, but I do feel that this gameplay mechanic conflicts heavily with the kind of relaxed atmosphere that the game conveys. There's a wide variety of beautiful locales to see in Atelier Aisha, and though some areas do exhibit a limited color palette, it's cleverly masked through the game's wonderful art design. Towns are rich with people, often layered with tons of side quests that you can pick up. New to the game is the ability to toggle running on the field, which complements its fast travel system well. As I am playing this game on the Switch, I notice that the frame rate tends to dip in certain places around town. Thankfully, this is a minor nuisance, given that the game is still highly responsive and that none of these performance issues ever occur during critical moments, such as being on the field with enemies or during battle. One of the many reasons I shied away from previous Atelier games is because they seemed targeted towards a female audience. Looking at Atelier Aisha's character designs and experiencing some of its earlier jokes and japes, I certainly wouldn't fault anyone in thinking that that's the case for this game.
Being covered with soot will spoil your cuteness.
Jeez, you're always saying stuff like that. I start blushing whenever you call me cute.
In fact, Atelier Aisha's English voice acting comes across as conveying a softer, more feminine motif than being wholesome, not that I personally mind. On the subject of its voice acting, there's a lot of talented voice actors featured in Atelier Aisha who have played memorable characters in other games. But overall, I found that the English voice acting in Atelier Aisha feels average at best. All told, I could tell that the voice actors tried their best to embody their roles and give it their all, but with better voice direction, their performances could have been more memorable. Fortunately, if you find that the English voice acting just isn't your cup of tea, there's always the option to change the voice acting to Japanese. As you further explore the world of Dusk, you'll often encounter numerous cutscenes that give flavor to Atelier Aisha's many characters. These scenes embody the heart and soul of the Atelier series. Wholesome, happenstance meetings and events that delve on character growth that you'll want to experience a lot of. And as Atelier Aisha continues to develop its stories and mold the experiences of its supporting cast, you'll notice that much of this development is mostly in service to represent Aisha's growing understanding of the new world she's discovering. Aisha is portrayed as a very friendly, but mostly innocent and naive girl, constantly questioning her skills as an alchemist throughout your journey with her. Her infrequent interactions with Keithgriff often fill me with mixed emotions. Whenever they occur, it's a signal that the game's plot is about to advance, filling me with anticipation. But these moments are also frustrating, as Aisha becomes the target of his cutting remarks and his visible dismissal of her presence. Over time, their dynamic changes to a degree, but this is mostly due to Aisha's singular focus to learn alchemy to save her sister, which is her driving motivation throughout the story. But despite Keithgriff's harshness, Aisha never thinks ill of the man, and instead, tries her best to be reconciliatory and eager to learn about alchemy and its many facets. One way to describe her typical interactions with others is that she's always mindful of how she portrays herself to other people, and to step in quickly to try and remedy any wrongdoing she may have done towards others. It's this quality that makes me see Aisha as a kind soul who once knew nothing of the world around her, but upon embarking on her journey, she was finally able to see things in a different way, opening her understanding of the world even more and becoming a better person in the end. What I just described is why Aisha is the perfect representative and embodiment of the many Atelier protagonists before her, and you can't help but smile and laugh as she meanders her way through the vast unknown in front of her. Atelier Aisha feels as though it was released at a time when the series was at an inflection point. Looking at the combat and synthesis systems, I see familiar elements that have been repeatedly iterated and improved upon over the years, which is what led me to play and finish my first Atelier game last year. In many ways, Aisha herself serves as the perfect metaphor for the momentous occasion when a new legacy is about to be formed, but with one foot planted firmly in the past. It's through this that I've come to cherish the first act of the Atelier Dusk DX trilogy, both as a game and its contributions to the future of the series beyond itself, and the promise of sweeping, coming changes only makes me eager to continue my journey through the rest of the Dusk trilogy.